Welcome to Eye on the Seat. Since the return to multi-party democracy in 1992, the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party have taken turns in government, with over 96-97% of the vote going to them. It's hardly surprising that many Ghanaians refer to them as the main parties. What is their record in government? And as we come up to another election, will that record affect the decision of the voter? My guest is Kofi Adams, national organizer of the National Democratic Congress. We'll be talking to him about the party's record in government and what he sees as the prospects for the upcoming election. Remember, you can join our discussion also on Facebook and Twitter, and also on 3FM 92.7 in Accra, and on Connect FM 97.1 in Takoradi. Kofi, thank you for coming.
Thank you, David.
Kofi, track record in government. I'd like to begin with that. I mean, the NDC has been in government for at least 2-3 times over the last 20 or so years. And we're coming up to another election. In your view, does the track record of the party in government, is it going to help you as you come up to another election?
David, thank you very much for this question, and good evening to our viewers and those who are listening on radio as well. The track record of the National Democratic Congress, anytime it's had opportunity to govern, is so clear. So very clear, and that it is not surprising that every leader we have chosen as a party has had a chance of becoming a president. President Rawlings was our first leader. He won an election. Professor Mills was our second leader. He won an election and became president of this republic. President Mahama was also another leader that we've chosen. He's won his first election and he's going to win his second again come December 7th, 2016. Our record, both in government and out of government, is an envy to a lot. Politically, political parties across Africa, West Africa, Africa, and even beyond come to our party headquarters regularly to come and study and see how we get things done. Our focus anytime we have the chance to manage the pace of the country has been working to reduce the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And so we have always focused on what is very critical in life.
Would you say that all the different presidents have performed up to the standard that you describe? I mean, you've had President Rawlings, there's no question. President Mills has come, of blessed memory. President Mahama is here. Surely there is a difference.
Sure, there will be difference. Because one, these are persons whose approach to governance is different. The challenges that confront them is also different. So you don't expect the same prescription to fit all, because they are confronted with different challenges.
But the challenges remain.
The challenge, a number of them will come and go. Some will come, they will be different. In one state, it will be issue of security. In another stage, it will be issue of what? Infrastructure. In another point, it will be issue of employment. In another time, it will be combination of all. What I can say is that considering the challenges of the times, whether under President Rawlings, under President Mills, and currently under President Mahama, they have all discharged their duty creditably. And I'll tell you why I say so in a jiffy. Take, for example, before the NDC took over the reins of governance, that is from 2009, one of the common things you see in Accra is people deprived of water, carrying buckets and walking around the city. This is Accra, capital city.
We still see that. We still see that.
But it has drastically been reduced. If you see it, then maybe it's as a result of a burst pipe, or either because pipes have not been connected. I mean, not because there is no water. Go to areas like La, Peshi, Nungwa, Adenta, Mamobi, and the rest that used to go without water. Adenta for years haven't seen water. Today they have water. You go to places like Chebi that haven't seen good water. Today they have water. You go to areas like Kumewu that haven't seen water. Today they have water.
And now there's a whole set of new areas without water.
I agree.
We seem to take turns.
You see,
like sometimes they have it here, then they don't have it here.
No, it's not tense. You see, that is why President Mahama says he is transforming. He's not just growing, but he has to transform it. And that is what people don't understand.
But we need
the transformational agenda. The evidence is what you have said that today, lesser people, if you say you may still see even one, which is like looking for Eliza's urine. If you are looking for somebody carrying a bucket of water running around, it's like looking for Eliza's urine. Even though you say you can still see that, we have drastically reduced that. In the past, you walk on the street of Accra and you meet a young person in the morning, he tells you, I'm for the afternoon shift. You meet him in the afternoon, he says, I went in the morning. Today, that has drastically been removed. You hardly will see such situation again. All kids go to school the same normal time, have equal contact hours. So you are bettering their lots. You go to health. You guys are in the media and you are particularly worried about situation where people are sick, they go to hospitals and they don't get beds to sleep on, or you would realize the heavy investment in the area of healthcare provision.
But let's look at
regards infrastructure.
But let's look at more fundamental. I mean, you speak about health, and in this day and age, we still battle with cholera. We still battle. Look what happens even in the main cities when the rains come and so on.
I agree with you.
There are some really basic things that we continue to struggle with. I mean, is it not true? I mean, if you really do an honest assessment, that really the effort to advance the nation has been too slow?
David, I agree with you about why we still encounter some ailments and diseases that maybe we should not be, but that is attitudes. Attitude that all of us must work out.
But that is part of it.
For example, why would anybody feel so comfortable after drinking water to drop that liter anywhere, anyhow? Why do we feel that so comfortable to do so?
Is that not
should it be, is it government that should come and make sure that you don't drop liter?
No, it is.
So we need to work on the certain civic responsibility and maybe cleanliness for all of us.
Precisely, but you say we need to work on that.
And that must be championed. That must be championed by all. For example,
but government must lead the process.
Must launch an initiative that every first Saturday of every month, we're going to support with equipment to engage in clean up.
And what happens to that?
It's still going on, but how many of us in civil society, the media and the rest have partnered to make sure that this succeeds?
So it's the fault of the people.
I'm not just blaming any single person.
I say that because
all of us must team up, because
let me explain the question so you can. I say that because, you know, we've had times in the past where you see a government that wants to create change actively even use the Information Services Department to carry out public education campaigns. I mean, behavioral change is not going to spring up on its own. Even that sort of thing, people's attitudes, is something government can lead. It is not, I mean, these days when you see the cars parked with speakers, they're selling DVDs or something. What happened to all of that? Don't you agree that there's something also the government can do to make that better?
The NCC of today seems to be much more equipped than the NCC
of yesterday.
Me and you knew of yesterday.
And yet,
what do we call? There's another the Information
Services Department.
ISD rather seems to be much more equipped today than it was, but it looks like attitudes, and for me that is what is the killer.
But that is their work.
But that attitude should not be left alone for government. All of us, religious leaders, traditional leaders, media, politicians, everybody, student leaders, everybody must be engaged in that call.
Let me ask you,
the situation where we honor and celebrate persons irrespective of what they do. people do wrong. People feel that once they've made money, they are the ones that get the best of seats in our churches. So on and so forth.
Let me ask
it's
you,
worrying.
It's worrying. Do you think really, Kofi, that people vote on the basis of some of these things we discuss? I mean, there's also the view that, you know, we've turned the politics into like two big clubs. You know, the affinity is really, you belong
David,
to it and so you do it.
No, David.
That's not
it's
really...
That's one thing that worries me. And I pray that this year, 2016, Ghanaians would vote based on the performance, because we have performed so well that they will not just look at somebody saying that maybe Somishe, try me too.
When you say...
And not attempt to go and do try me too and make a mistake.
When you say they performed so well...
We've performed.
Well, let's look at some of the things that, for example, influence the thinking of people. Yeah. Some of the things that people are not very passionate about. Let's take, for example, a government's track record on, say, corruption.
Yeah.
I mean, it is one of those things that is surely undermines development of a country when the resources disappear. There is substantial, if you like, you know, attribution of corruption to the governments over the years, and even this particular government suffers that critique substantially. Do you agree that that is something that not enough work has been done on, that you really have a long way to go in dealing with that?
I agree that corruption is a serious situation for us to fight.
But again, you share it with everybody. Everybody's fault.
I disagree that not much has been done.
What has been done? What has been done?
Yes, I will deal with that in a short while. You see, the leader, as we were talking about earlier, that must lead the way, must not justify corruption. And clearly, President Mahama has never, on any platform, justified corruption. President Mahama has described corruption as mass murder. He has indicated clearly that he doesn't mind who is involved, whether you are in his government, you are not in his government. If there is any indication that you've done something that has affected this country in any way that is deemed to be corrupt, he will let the due process apply.
And what has he done about it?
And
what has he done about it? Let's look specifically now. What has he done about it?
For example, you get a situation where people complain that judgment debts have been paid over the years by various governments, and some question those judgment debts. What did the president do? He says, no, let's put a commission to look into the fundamentals and make sure that we stop this.
But is that not part of the problem?
I'm
just
saying that
to establish
it's not part of the part of the solution.
And so where has that led to? So how has that led to a solution?
As a result of the detailed search and work that commission did, it has now resulted in better works towards building. For example, take this institution, the National Youth Employment, that did not have any governing principles. Today, as we speak, and as we're talking here now, a law has been passed by Parliament that backs that. So now, to take any action, you have to follow due process.
Do we?
Yes, of course. You have to. If you don't, there is a law to deal with you. If you don't, there's a law to deal with you.
So that is
the president, for example, through his directives, the National Service Secretariat went into action and have dealt with a number of persons. Some are being prosecuted. Those that can be prosecuted are being prosecuted as we speak. The president cannot go and pick them and put them in jail. So unfortunately, per our laws, the president don't prosecute. So how many? It's the Attorney General who prosecutes.
So how many people has the government prosecuted and put in jail?
You see, the unfortunate thing is that you and I may see an action as being corrupt if it's taken to the courts. So and the judiciary decides to free them. The executive cannot do anything. So the you know the number of cases that government has taken to court to prosecute, and the judiciary have concluded that no, you cannot do anything to this person.
It is the responsibility of the government lawyer to make the case.
And I'm saying that you make the best of case that you think you can make,
and then the judges
decide otherwise.
So corruption.
If the judges decide otherwise, you cannot do anything.
So we can come to the conclusion that a big part of the corruption that exists in Ghana, why we can't tackle it, is because the judiciary does not tackle it.
I don't want to be cited for these days. They are so quick at citing people for contempt and then what have you when you try fuck it.
But could it not be?
But at least evidence abounds per Anas Arimia Anas work that he did, that there's something absolutely wrong with our judiciary. But it is also clear that we have standardized way of measuring corruption. The corruption perception index is at least what we have come to know as a standardized measure, not what Kofi Adams thinks or David thinks or what an MPP person thinks or somebody out there thinks. There's a way that we have all agreed over the years that is used in measuring corruption or corruption perception. And over the years, the performance of this administration have been far better than the administration we inherited from in 2009. Indeed, our worst performance, which was a score of 39 out of 100, was the best performance of the previous administration between 2001 and 2008. So what it tells you, therefore, is that we are working even more in fighting corruption than others did, except that it's something that all of us must collectively put our hands on. Like the president have described, he says it is mass murder. You know that when you describe something that is wrong in a certain way, what you are trying to say is that nobody should even think about it. I would not be happy having my president justify corruption by telling me that it is something that is as old as the creation of the first man. Once you do that, you are creating room for those who want to be corrupt to say that this is something that you cannot do without, because it's true, we all know it's as old as Adam, but we do not want our leaders to be the ones to be telling us that. And I'm happy President Mahama is not one of such leaders. He's critically describing the way it must be described. He didn't say it's murder, he says mass murder.
Do you think that he considers his effort to fight corruption successful? Is he happy with his track record as the NDC?
I believe that he would have been so happy if the process of fighting corruption ended with him only, and you didn't have to go through another arm of government. If that was the case, we would have seen much more. But unfortunately, we are governed by a country with rule of law.
But we are talking
that
also
when
about
you feel that
corruption
somebody is corrupt,
yes,
you must put the person through a process.
Yeah.
You see, government is not made up of only.
But Kofi, that is just a second. That is tackling it.
Yeah.
Let's look also at the practice of it in government, in procurement, in business, across board, in projects, the issues of inflated cost and so on. That whole element,
David,
gives us a different picture than you described.
I've heard this over and over, and I've heard opponents of us talk about soul sourcing, and that immediately there's soul sourcing, it means that there's corruption. Speaking truly, that is not the case. Soul sourcing does not mean corruption. You soul source when need be. But this government, from 2009,
but it creates room.
From 2009
right
to 2015, the sole source contracts that the government have done is less than 3%. You can check, the records are there. Less than 3%. So between 2001 and 2008, the sole source contracts amounted to more than 12%. So in terms of percentage, this government has done less sole source contracts than the previous administration. But you hear them shout that sole sourcing, corruption, sole sourcing, corruption. If that is the case, then you are much more corrupt than the government you are pointing fingers at.
Well, Kofi, 3% can be worth $1 billion, and 10% can be worth $500,000.
I'm not looking.
It doesn't. It's really the consensus don't mean anything.
I'm not looking at where I'm talking about the number of times you have to go into it. Meaning that if it was necessary to do it those number of times in just 8 years.
So the amounts that are involved don't matter.
You are worried. The amounts may not matter.
The amounts don't matter.
The amount don't matter.
To you, it's the frequency with which
it is the frequency.
That's what
because
determines
the amount don't matter. Once that service can only be provided by that agency, or the funding is coming from that agency, and therefore they are restricting you to only those areas, you cannot do otherwise.
Let's look, Kofi, let's look at the track record in a broader sense. I don't want us to get locked down in corruption. I mean, this is an agricultural country.
Sure.
I mean, for many, the competitive advantage really should lie in agribusiness.
You are right.
But we've had 22 years of a return to constitutional democracy. And the whole idea is that it enables us to develop the country. Look at the shape of agriculture today. I mean, whether it's the price of basic foodstuffs or whether it is the price of commodities that you export. Governments over the years have spoken about adding value, changing the fundamentals. The more we try to change things, the more they remain the same.
That is why we need to give opportunity for that person who has started transforming, doing something right in our agriculture front to continue.
But why don't you take the view of the period? I mean,
for example, we use our processing industry used to be really very weak. President Mahama is seriously working at it, and you can see it. You can see vividly the signs of it in many areas, and you can also see that production in many sectors of agriculture has improved. Cereals. Today we are producing more rice in Ghana than we used to do.
But we have
not really reached the target that we want to reach.
I mean, do you seriously think that the local rice is making a big impact on this market
that's
today?
We can make a better impact. And that's what worries me, that if, for example, we had allowed the Aveime rice project to have continued, today we would have been adding to that. Unfortunately, for political reasons, such a wonderful initiative was left to rot completely. Now we have to start building all over again, and that is why I want the many good and wonderful things that have been started need to be continued.
So there's
the processing sector that you see, whether it is sugar that we have to now produce here, and through that we will not use our sugar cane for just brewing apeteshi and the rest, but then we'll also use it in making sugar that will end in many homes for us to use. Whether it is shea nut processing factory that is found in Bipe that we need to add more, whether it is cashew processing,
but
which
you
is
can't guarantee this will continue.
You say?
There has to be something wrong with the system where everything starts and stops, and you have to begin it again. I want us to take that view of development. Yes, that's what I wanted to talk about.
That's why when I hear people not supporting the National Development Planning Commission idea of having a national development charter and agenda that political parties feed in, it frightens me. And that is why the view of the opposition, the main opposition party in this country, NPP, against such initiative tells you that they don't intend to continue projects that have commenced.
So we import plantain, we import basic foodstuffs now.
Unfortunately for us, David, unfortunately for us, some of these food products because they are seasonal. Because they are seasonal, you have them in bumper time during, but the Agric Ministry has clearly indicated that plantain is not one of such food crops that is imported, but it's a seasonal thing. I agree with you that it comes and then drop. We could find a way of making sure that those who love plantain can have their plantain all through
what
the year.
What about agribusiness? I mean, let's talk about it as business. I mean, there are private sector people making an effort, putting in place. Let's take companies that are processing pineapples. And I mean, we used to have about 26, 27 farms, pineapple farms. There's only about 3 or 4 now. That cannot be, the actions of governments that are focused on transforming the country.
David, I don't know.
And I'm not referring only to NDC government, by the way. I'm describing the period.
I don't know the number of pineapple farms that we may have in the country. But the truth is that a lot more is being done to make sure that we process some of our food crops in this country. And that is why investment in the road sector. Let me give you one example. About maybe 3-4 years ago, if you have to go to a place like Nkwanta or Bimbela and you are going through Hohwe, even if you were using a 4-wheel, whether it's a pickup or a Land Cruiser, you only have to pray that you arrive safely. Either you get stuck,
whose fault,
or you never, or you will never reach. Today, even when you take a tricycle,
you can go by.
You can go up.
But that's just one road.
No, I am giving you but it extends to many other areas. But I am giving you an example of when people say we don't eat roads, they don't realize it. Because you, for example, will be willing to go and farm in far away place when you know that it's so easy to move the products that you harvest to a farm center. Rather than getting it being locked in there. So it's an area that government is working so hard to make sure that we improved upon.
But do you agree, Kofi, that is also part of the problem, that we don't take a big picture approach?
But anyway,
I mean, I'm talking about, say, before you go, let's say roads. You know, this is a country of say 200,000 square kilometers. It has 10 regions. It has a strategy to build roads. So the strategies, for example, is maybe main roads that are arteries that link regions. Perhaps they link to food growing areas, as you say. You don't see the overall strategy. All you hear is something about one specific road in one place. This surely is not the way to make progress.
That's why I'm talking to you about transformation. That's what President Mahama is doing. That's why you take the Eastern Corridor route that traverse part of Greater Accra, Eastern region, Volta region, Northern region to Upper East, and going through farm areas.
And how far down the line
there are link roads that link into such major roads. If you go through it, that's the transformation thing that I'm talking about. Dams that have been built to be able to store much more water so that you can irrigate a lot more lands.
Wow.
The building of the international airport in the northern part of the country is not for nothing. But what will happen is that if you have companies like the Blue Skies that establish, say, so close to Kotoka International Airport, because they export a chunk of their fruits. Yeah, so they need to be closer to a means of transport to airlift their products. But you mentioned now having such an international airport there will mean that other companies would also locate in the areas of Yendi, Bimbila, Waliwale, and all Wa and the rest to employ people to process food into either finished or semi-finished for exports. And jobs will be created. And it will mean that more people will want to go into agriculture because they know they have an assured sales opportunity.
You mentioned Blue Skies. Yeah. Blue Skies is today importing
some of their raw material.
Whether it's mangoes or so. How can that be in a country
that's another worrying trend.
Yeah. So it's an indictment on government.
David, I'll take you back to the year 2000. I remember when government was pushing and campaigning hardly for youth and agriculture project. We had politicians who mounted platforms and said agriculture was not employment. And that when we talk of employment, we are talking about white-collar job. Why was government promoting something on youth in agriculture? That they should vote for them and they will come and give them jobs that they will wear tie to go to.
But I'm talking about agribusiness. I'm not talking about agriculture.
I'm coming.
Yeah.
But
the young people have to.
The young people have to be willing to go into the farms before the next chain will follow. That was what I was coming to agree with you, that the agribusiness thing, we need to do a lot more. You have young persons who get into our universities, train in food scientists, who train about processing.
Is it a priority? Does the NDCC, as you're saying, agribusiness? You see, what
that is why, if you look at our implementation of program over the years, we have moved from. First, you cannot go direct into major agribusiness. You have to start from somewhere. And that is why the buffer stock system was established. That in order that the farmer is not cheated. So that because when anytime there's a glut, his price go down. So he loses. So the farmer this year, when there's a glut, next year they won't go into that crop again. Then you see we fall into a lean season.
But there are ways of
David, I'm coming. That is why government decided that let's introduce a buffer stock. So that this buffer stock will buy the food products from the farmer at an acceptable price that he or she doesn't lose.
And what's
so they are not discouraged. It's still going on. They are not discouraged from production.
And
that is why, for example, today, as I speak to you, the rice production has gone high. And government is working at doing same in other areas. So that there will be some level of sustainability in terms of price, that you are sure that no matter how much you produce, there is some market opportunity for you that you will not be losing. Once that starts, then processing comes in, then exports come in. It's in a certain order, a methodic order. The transformational agenda is ongoing. It's a train on the move that we need everybody to come on board.
Let's talk about specifics. Let's take rice, as you mentioned quite a bit of. Do you know what percentage of the rice on the local market is produced locally? Do we know that? 5%, 10%? And at what point do we where do we want to make it? How much of foreign rice do we want to replace? Over what period do we want to? What is the plan?
David, I may not have all these details, but there's a story I have that I can tell you. You bag local rice in the local bags.
And they won't buy it.
And they won't buy.
So
you take the same local rice and put it in a perfumed rice bag imported, and everybody is rushing for it and eating the same rice and saying it tastes so good and coming back to you and asking you. That is where you, the marketing people, come in.
How do you interpret that?
That's where you, the marketing people, come in.
Yeah.
That you must help in the marketing department.
Right.
You, the marketing people, that's where you come in.
We should help people understand how to eat their own rice rather than
possibly eat their own, the value of it and the rest. We should run much more programs that will let people understand the quality of our rice.
Let's talk about adding value. I mean, let's talk about manufacturing. It's all but disappeared. Yeah. Manufacturing has all but disappeared in this country, my dear brother.
I agree with you, because not too long ago, the Kumasi Shoe Factory used to be a den of criminals. A den of criminals.
So that's what is that?
I'm giving you just an example. And so I agree with you. Today, when you go there, it's no longer a den for criminals, but at least work is ongoing.
But take a big picture. Kofi, what I'm saying is that I don't want us to restrict it.
I'm only giving you, but I can only give you examples one after the other to tell you that the plan is in place. For manufacturing to thrive,
yes,
power is key.
I'm happy you mentioned that. So
energy,
that is the challenge.
energy is key.
But
that is why the president has been very much focused on the issue of generating the alternative.
Many years.
You see, let me.
Many years. I mean, in many respects, this president's job was cut out for him. I mean, frankly, if when he first came into power, he had decided just to solve the power problem, I think he would be advanced, wouldn't we? Is that not part of the problem?
I thought that it would be so easy to just solve the energy, but there are a number of challenges that confronted this country that you not just go focusing on energy. I just told you about people looking for water. I just told you about people.
But power is at the heart of it.
No,
I mean, even water, you need to pump the water. There's no water without power.
The truth is that a lot has happened in the energy sector.
And I hear you.
David, let me just give you this.
We have increased generation.
Let me, even before we get to generation, we used to depend solely on hydro, Akosombo and Kpong. Then research came out that, look, considering the climatic situation, that is not where to go. We did not put investment in hydro again. Unfortunately, the government at the time decided that no, we still want to go into hydro. So we came on stream. We today is running like a generator. You switch it on and off. It cannot run 24/7. But a lot of money has been locked in there. And so investment in alternative was not done. Since this government came into being, the 1,020 megawatts that are supposed to be coming from Akosombo, we are getting less than 300 megawatts as we speak now because of low levels of water. But for the alternatives that the government sought, and to make sure that we build the Atuabo gas to have control of our own gas, to be able to make sure that we supply it to our country when others may be competing for it, the situation would have even been worse. But we are still determined to do even much more. That's why we should be happy that we are at 10
because we could have been at 2. Is that the thinking?
We are not even happy that we should be. We are not even saying that people should be happy that we are.
But you say it could be a lot worse.
We are at 8 instead of 10. I agree that it could have been worse. Seriously, it could have been worse. Seriously, it could have been worse. You see.
Thank you for staying with us. I'm speaking to Kofi Adams, the national organizer of the NDC, about his party's track record in government over the years and why he thinks that they should be given the mandate again. Kofi, we were talking about power.
Power, yeah.
There is essentially very little progress the country can make without reliable and adequate power. Yes, the government has spent time trying to improve generation, but the fact still remains. Dumsor is not gone anywhere, and we are faced with it. Doesn't that tell you something?
You're right to some extent, but also wrong. And I'll tell you why I think that you are wrong. And sometimes people say you don't have to compare. Once I agree that when you are a tall person, you don't have to be comparing yourself with a short person. Your competition should be with people who are taller than you. So I agree with those who feel that the performance of the NPP should not be our yardstick to compare when it comes to issues of power generation.
But you described the NPP performance as though it was poor.
I agree with you that it was, and it's poor, and I want to demonstrate that to you.
That the NPP performance is poor.
For 8 years that they were in power, not a single megawatt was ever commissioned.
Those are
not a single megawatt. We was never completed. Actually, we came to complete.
But that is the whole idea.
Which was hydro. Which was
hydro.
Complete
what somebody doesn't start.
Listen, which was hydro.
Yes.
If we had a chance, we wouldn't have gone hydro. Based on the research that was available.
You would have gone thermal.
Would have gone thermal. Would have gone other alternative. With that money that went into we surely would have gone into thermal, and it would have helped us.
And you have been dealing with thermal, and what is the result of it now?
And I'm telling you that if you look at for 8 years, the issue of energy crisis didn't start just yesterday.
Correct.
President Rawlings encountered it. It was, the report was there, so clear what we should do, which never was started. And that was why for 8 years, not a single megawatt of thermal power generation was added to what President Rawlings left.
A problem that was there when President Rawlings was there is still there 20 years later.
What the private persons added. So when I hear people say that, what for 8 years, somebody could not add a single megawatt. For 4 years, another person should do magic. Meaning that, yes, they expect him to be able to do, and that's why he's doing so much. That is why, for example, one of the first things, talking about raw material, you need to have control of the gas. That's why government decided that let's establish Ghana Gas Company that we have ownership of, that we will be able to process our own gas, that we can direct the valves that this is where we want you to take it to, not sell to the one who can pay more.
And right now,
so we've done that.
There is doom. So
we've done that.
The lights we have not solved the power problem. I want us to agree with that. Do you agree that the power problem has not gotten any better? Really?
For I'm not saying Ghanaians are children, but for a child who is hungry, or a husband who is hungry and at home, he may not mind how far the preparation of food is ongoing in the kitchen. He may not even mind that there was actually even no food at home, and the wife have to go to the market to go and buy, or go to the farms to go and harvest before coming to prepare. He still continue crying about the hunger, that the stomach is empty. But I can tell you that a lot has happened in the kitchen, that food will be on table for you.
Let me explain. Let me ask you about. I mean, one of the things that is worrying about the power problem is there seems to be a certain idea that the solution really is one of just generating power, creating more plants, creating more. But you will agree with me that really the issue is a lot more complex than that. I mean, if you have power plants and you can't put fuel, you cannot afford for a certain kind of management, you can't put fuel in the plants. See, the plants are as good as useless. Is that not correct?
No, it's not as good as useless.
But you have no,
for thermal, the possibility of them going down is very high. Because anything that you use fuel like petrol or diesel or light crude to run, the possibility of it going down is higher than hydro. That is why it's important to have more, so that if even some goes down, and the cycle of maintenance is also faster than where you are using hydro. So you need even more, so that even if the routine cycle of maintenance will have to happen in the future as we are planning, it will not affect supply.
But do you know that
it's not true that just having more is not okay. You need to have more.
Yeah, but you have
the problem with energy.
Before you go on, having more is what, in technical language they talk about installed capacity. I mean, strictly speaking, if this country, for example, consumes maybe 1,800 megawatts of electricity, and it has a capacity of little over 2,500. So it's not really an issue of that then. Something is happening. The plants are down. The whole management issues, things are.
That's exactly what I'm coming to. If you have a plant in the Tema Enclave that is gas only, like the Sonny Asogli power plant, that is gas only. that can take its gas only from West African gas pipeline. And there is no supply from Nigeria because of the vandalization issue. That plant cannot run because it cannot run on alternative fuel. You cannot use light crude on it. It only runs on gas.
That's the one plant that's like that. The
as we speak now also, we have not laid a pipe from the western zone to the eastern zone. The company responsible for that is just working to get the contract underway for a pipeline to be laid from a Atuabo area to bring gas to
people want solutions. I mean,
but that's what I'm providing you
all the time. When do we get? When does it end?
David, the issue of energy is not like a bread that is on the shelf that you wake up in the morning and you feel like taking tea and bread, and you can send your child to go to the bread seller.
So if that is the case, why has the government reminded people all the time that it will be over? Since it takes so much time, this same government said it will be over by the end of last year.
Of course,
it's constantly talking about when it will be over.
Of course, David, I'm not talking about the doomsday thing that you are talking about. As for that one, it's something that we have scaled. As for that one, it's something that we have skilled.
Do you not see the impact of doomsday on?
Who says that we don't see impact?
No, because I'm talking about whether it's a hairdresser.
Don't mix the two. I'm not talking about impact. Yeah. You are saying we haven't, and I'm saying that the power challenges that resulted in 12 hours of light, 24 hours of darkness is no more with us. Do you still sleep 24-hour darkness and 12-hour light? No. So we have scale. I am talking about production levels that will go to that level that Ghana may even be exporting to other countries. That is what I'm talking about.
This is the sort of thing that's dangerous to talk about. No, I mean, when you tell people that you're going to be exporting power in an environment where people don't even have enough, what are you talking about? It's like building castles in the air.
If all the installed capacity, as you said, actualize or start producing, of course, currently as we speak, we would not need all that, and that is why we've signed onto the West African gas power pool, the West African power pool agreement. We are into it, so we can sell power to export power to Burkina. We can even beyond, even to Togo, even to Benin and others.
Okay,
don't also forget that. Okay. When I hear people compare us with Cote d'Ivoire, it looks like they haven't been to La Cote d'Ivoire. La Cote d'Ivoire has only about 30-something% of coverage of power in their country. So over 60% of their country is completely, they don't even have access to power. They don't. It's not doom soul. Okay. It is doom. Okay. They don't even have it at all.
You're getting ready now.
We have covered over 76%.
You're getting ready now to go for an election. Yeah. I want you to tell me the one single most important argument that you will make to Ghanaians as to why they must return an NDC government to power.
There are myriad of problems that confront this country that we are solving, that we have placed our hands on. The president has placed his hands on.
Have you solved any? Or are you just solving?
I just gave you a number when we started. Yeah. I talked about water. I talked about health. I've talked about education.
If I open the phone lines now and ask the people...
I talk about roads. You see, we have covered much more. I'm not saying that everybody. Of course, it's a journey. It's a journey that is ongoing. Even in the even in the developed world, that is supposed to have been fully developed, you encounter areas where that.
But don't be confused. They've resolved certain things. There are certain things they have resolved. We are constantly playing with this business,
and that is why we need to allow the serious person to continue, so we can solve all those problems and stop playing with them.
So your real mandate, what you are going to say to Ghanaians, is that
no, I'm not coming to that
again, so that you can finish.
We can finish what we have started, but one most important thing is what we think we have, and therefore we overlook it. Someone who can hold this country together. Someone who can make sure that this country is at peace with each other.
That is one of the fundamental things.
Fundamental that you must look at. President Mahama has proven over the last 4 years that he can hold this country together. Why go play cha-cha with your life?
That's the way.
And go and bring somebody who you are not sure of, who can plunge this country into chaos.
This is
because before you can even get potable water to drink.
Yeah.
Before you can get a good school to go, there must be peace and security.
Yes, but
that is key.
But you
that is key for me.
You don't think there's any link between the hardship that people experience and stability? You think that that instability will just come from one side because of what makes the other side more prone to instability?
I am telling you that. Oh, it's so clear. I don't want to go there because their rep decided not to come. So I don't want to go there. But you know what is happening at their headquarters, where they are chasing each other, butchering each other, pouring acid on each other, and then the rest. So that's why I don't want us to talk about
but I don't know that
as a result of leadership that is in Lakuda, leadership that cannot offer leadership. So we don't want that. We don't want that to be visited on the country. So we want somebody who is steady. Who, when we leave our children with, we are sure that we will come back.
So that is why they must vote for you.
That's why you need it for all the other things that he already has his hands on to be done.
Kofi, we're out of time. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you. Always a pleasure talking.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
To join us again, thank you for watching.